I'm Steph. My presentation is about using Annotator with H20. I don't tweet, don't look for me on Twitter unless you want to see pictures of babies and dogs. I work for Endpoint. I'll kind of give you guys a background. So H20 is a project by the Berkman Center. The Berkman Center is a group within Harvard Law. It's an annotated digital legal casebook classroom tool. So what does that mean? It means professors of Harvard Law put together syllabi, playlists of content, and then they present the content to their students. The content is a collection of links, text, annotated text. It's kind of an extension of a learning management system. I like a lot of the tools that have been presented here so far. There's a lot of really cool things that could be applied to H20. It's pretty old by web standards. It's, I think, like a 10-year-old project. And it's open source, Ruby on Rails, jQuery. That's the URL if anyone wants to go to it. How is Endpoint involved? Endpoint's a dev shop. It's a private consulting company. We mostly do e-commerce consulting, but we got involved with the Berkman Center about 3 years ago and now do work with them for various projects, including H20. So I like the mantra to not focus on annotations, but I'm going to focus on annotations and what we're doing with Annotator. So imagine a world where Internet Explorer users roam the earth by the majority. This is about 4 years ago is when H20 started doing annotations. This is a little graph I pulled from W3C about browser stats. So somewhere, I think around 2010, maybe earlier, is when H20 wanted to do annotations. So they built out a homegrown annotation functionality. You don't really want to look at the code, but if you're interested, it turns every word into a selectable DOM node. So, and that's kind of how they offer the ability to annotate text. As anyone who's into coding can imagine, the performance is pretty terrible, especially in Internet Explorer, and Firefox isn't so great when you get to text that has more than 20,000 words, which in legal casebooks is a lot of text. Versioning of the content or managing versioning is not fun. The user interface isn't really intuitive, and it works-ish. I say ish because it's pretty popular among the Harvard Law professors, but there's some intuitive behavior things that can be improved, and that's kind of how we came to find Annotator. So yes, we need the ability to annotate content. We're not going to throw away existing functionality. And do we need Annotator? Well, like I said, the performance of our current implementation is terrible. We like a lot of the ideas that have been presented on versioning content or managing versions, and we like a lot of the multimedia annotation stuff that's come out of it. So I'm just going to go through some screenshots of interesting problems that we've solved with Annotator implementation. And just a note, all of this is backwards compatible now, so it's both integrated in the old functionality without Annotator and the new functionality with Annotator. So this is just a syllabus of what a professor might present to their student. It's it's kind of similar to what any learning management system might present. It breaks down material into different classes, and they kind of had wanted to add scheduling where you read this class this week and you read this section this week. And one of those items is what we call a collage, which is annotated content. So in the Harvard Law context, this is all casebooks that have been imported from Google Scholar and Fastcase and whatever other resources they find. So it's pretty basic Annotator implementation. Nothing surprising yet. So one of the things that we had to do was add what I'll call actions. So we do quite a lot of manipulation of text, and in the legal case context, you'll have a lot of text, and the professors only want you to read a small portion of that. So they'll have 20,000 words, and they only want their students to read 500 words. So they'll annotate it and then hide everything else. So there's a lot of actions around hiding and manipulating that text. Oh, the timer's not running, so I have no idea how much time I have. Another thing we did with Annotator was color-coded tagging, so highlighting, annotating, and then adding specific colors. In H20, they wanted a specific set of defined colors that you can assign, and then you can add the categorization or tagging and assign it to a specific color. Once a color is used, it can't be used again until all the colors have been used, and then any color can be used again. One technically hard thing to do was managing overlapping colored highlights. So there's a jQuery plugin that we use called Xcolor. So it will calculate the color highlights of annotated text. So kind of, digitizing overlapping highlights that you might have in a physical book. Another thing that we built out was Heatmap functionality. So what this does is you have a base content, and multiple professors might have used it, and they kind of want to see what other professors are highlighting as required reading or as annotated important text. So the Heatmap is a visual representation of what professors are highlighting, where the darker red color is more popular highlighted text. We also link to other assets, so if you want to link to a specific part of the text and point to another piece of content, that's a functionality built in. That was a bit of a challenge with the interface, because we have to you might see on the bottom, it toggles back and forth between the standard Annotator interface and then this linking to other assets interface. So it's actually deployed in limited state, which means one user can upgrade to the Annotator version, and everyone else sees the old annotation functionality, and it's backwards compatible. I'm working on a Rails upgrade right now to Rails 4, and so we kind of want to package everything and upgrade everything together. And there's an automated migration that's implemented using Nokogiri, which is a Ruby gem that it's a Ruby XML CSS parsing gem that takes the existing annotation information and translates it to the data that Annotator can use. In the future, we want to use do multimedia integration with video and audio. Challenges: this isn't new. Handling version content. Obviously, I'm going at the end of the conference, so it's been touched a lot. But I think kind of back to what the Rap Genius people said. More importantly, how do you design a user interface where versioning will be popular and be adopted by the users of H20 who aren't particularly tech savvy relative to developers? And then H20 has a desire to represent the content in multiple formats. So if you annotate text in the web and you want to export it to EPUB or whatever format they want to do that, we actually did quite a lot of work trying to export to PDF, and there was a lot of performance issues with doing it in a scalable way. Does anyone have any questions? Thanks. And that's my daughter.
I guess so much for working in silos. So we've been doing the work that you've been doing with Annotator and H20. We clearly should be discussing more collaborations within the same institution. But we've published all of our Annotator plugins, and you're more than welcome to use them. They're open. Are you publishing any of your color coding tagging? Because we did color coding tagging, so it's absurd that we have duplicates.
Yeah, I think you guys released it shortly after I had finished working on it. So I would like to. I mean, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because I work for a private consulting company. I need the Berkman Center to really be the people that pursue that and say that. I mean, I can go back and say, hey, look, there's all these awesome things that I took away from this conference, but ultimately, and I work remotely, so I'm not in Boston. I'm not there to kind of be like, here, you should do this. But there's a little bit of lost in translation stuff from there. So
no, and I understand it's none of your issues. It's an institutional issue that we need to figure out. But it's unfortunate.